Conversations podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Conversations TNI podcast, coming to you from Wurundjeri Land in Melbourne. Before we start, just like to remind you to subscribe and like so you can keep up to date with the latest episodes. Today I have a dear friend, colleague of mine from Macquarie University, New South Wales, Professor Marc Orlando. Marc, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, Fatih. Thank you very much for having me again, actually. It's the second time, if I'm right.
Yes, it is the second time, but it's been a while. You and I had our first discussion, season 1, which was about 4 years ago now.
Yeah, that was in full COVID. Remember, full lockdown in Melbourne. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. And thankfully, we've been able to meet in person since then, because it was a while since. It was a while,
true.
Wasn't
Actually,
it?
we hadn't met. Yeah, we met online. That's the thing. Wow.
I know, and it was a couple of years until we actually finally were able to shake each other's hands.
Yeah. The good thing is that in 4 years, as we're going to discuss today, things have changed slightly or a little bit. So yeah, that's good that we still have a few new things to discuss.
Absolutely. Look, you are my go-to person when it comes to technology in the translating interpreting realm. And we spoke about some of the advancements back then. And it would be good to see what's been happening since.
And this being said, I'm not an expert, and this. There are people who are way more experts than I am. But yeah, no, this is definitely something that I'm quite interested in. Yeah.
Well, I know you, but some of our viewers and listeners may not know the full picture about you. So let me do a little bit of an introduction about you first, Marc, if you don't mind. So I'm going to blow your horn a little bit. So just accept it. Like I said, I am with Professor Marc Orlando today, and he is the Director of the Translation and Interpreting Program at Macquarie University. He is also these things, and I will keep the list short. There are more things I could add, but we do have limited time. But to get a bit of a picture about you, Marc, Marc is the board member also and vice president of CIUTI, the International Association of Universities offering TNI programs. He also sits on the Multicultural New South Wales Language Services Advisory Forum. He is also an active practicing conference interpreter, full member of AIIC, that's the International Association of Conference Interpreters. And from 2017 to 2022, he was also a member and coordinator of the Research Committee of AIIC. He also served on the NAATI Technical Reference and Advisory Committee from 2016 to 2021. Like I said, a whole lot more things I could add there, but we are going to try to keep this as
that's probably enough.
Okay. As short as humanly possible, because attention spans are not as much as they used to be, Mike. Are they? I mean, I'm still far from turning these podcasts into a 15-second, 30-second TikTok video, but let's just leave that for the next generation.
Yeah, exactly. No, we would miss something here. And again, that's great to see that you are in season 5?
Season 5 now. Yeah,
wow.
Season 5.
Well done, mate.
Well, I do apologize. It's been so long since I've had you back on our podcast, but it'll give us plenty to talk about. Like I said earlier, usually you and I, when we get together, and I know that you're always been interested in the TNI technologies for some time now, especially when it comes to interpreting technologies. Last time we spoke about you and your research on the digital pen. I won't go too much into detail of that. If people want, you can listen to the initial conversation we had about that. All right. Also, your research on video remote interpreting, especially after COVID. And again, that can also be found. The full report is now available on the Next PD website as well as the Macquarie University website. So what's been happening since? You've also had some travels recently. You went to the CIUTI conference as well. So you can be like our reporter, our international reporter. What's been happening? What's been happening on the interpreting side of things, especially when it comes to tech advancements in our field?
Okay, look, as you said, I've always been interested, since I've started practicing both in translation and interpreting, mainly in interpreting now. I'm First and foremost, I'm someone who's interested in education, in training, and I'm always interested in trying to see how we can change, improve, adapt, update curriculum or curricula, depending on where you work and what you're doing. So I have a really interest in didactics of TNI, of pedagogy. So my interest in technologies is always around the idea of how do we use these new technologies, if any, in training, or how can we, if we can. So you mentioned digital pens, the digital pen technology, that was exactly that. I was lucky to be one of the first to play with that technology and to try to implement that in training for note taking, and that led to different things like, if you use that in professional settings, you could also use that in hybrid mode. As you said, we discussed that before, but just simply to resituate or refocus on what interests me is really as well how we research things and see how we can turn that into training activities for or to train the next generations. So same with VRI. I did that with one of our dear colleagues who was doing a research degree at the time as well. Did a lot of research on VRI in Australia. And so, yeah, interested I am in technologies, specifically, again, when we try to look at how we could train interpreters with those and potentially impact the profession in practice. When I was, you mentioned I was part of the research committee of AIIC. When I was on the research committee of AIIC and the coordinator of the committee, we also were very interested in trying to promote research for the profession around technology. And so we set up a grant at the time that doesn't exist anymore, I think, but there was a research grant. And the 2 years where it was run, we had awardees who were working on RSI and different aspects of RSI. That was, if you remember, of course, was impacting our lives for the very first time that much. So again, how could we look at that for training purposes, but also to inform the profession? So yeah, I'm sorry to take just a step back, just simply to say, yes, I'm interested in technology, but not as a tech guru who will use things and try, gizmos here and there. It's more trying to see how we can improve, help, assist in training and potentially in the profession.
Can I just cut in there? Since COVID, have you incorporated some RSI training into your program? Is it a part of it now?
Yes, we have, and that's one of the things. Not the only, but one of the things I'm very happy with Macquarie University that I joined in 2020, because I've been very well supported in terms of equipment and in terms of, okay, what's new, what do you need, and what can we help you to acquire to make sure you can get the research and the training that you want. And so in 2022, so 2.5 years ago now, we set up a real RSI lab at Macquarie. So we have the usual interpreting labs with soundproof booths and so on. But we also have a separate soundproofed RSI lab with 2 different rooms where we have set up things. And I can talk about this a little bit later, specifically for research projects that we are about to start.
Because I've seen the conference interpreting booths, but I haven't seen your RSI.
Oh, you haven't seen the RSI lab? Okay, you definitely need to visit us again in Sydney. And
here's an excuse. Here's an excuse.
Here's an excuse, absolutely. So yeah, that's definitely something in training that now we try to expose students to using, of course, RSI in all its different forms, and because there are also different modalities for RSI itself. So that's something that we're interested in. But you said, now being your reporter, what everyone is speaking about at the moment is definitely AI, and how AI, large language models, and all the different things around will impact translation and interpreting. So I'm happy to discuss interpreting mainly. I mean, you have other guests with whom you can discuss technology and translation. I will probably say a few things, but
it always pops up with anyone I have on these days.
Absolutely,
there's always something about AI. So I don't think we'll be getting tired of it for a while.
No, but the thing is that, I mean, when we were at the most recent CIUTI meetings, we had the organizers of the conference, of the General Assembly, invited representatives of multilateral institutions, the UN and the European Parliament and Commission. And that was very interesting to hear these guys, as well as, the biggest employers of institution interpreters, see what they're, how it is impacting their work and what they will be looking for in the future in terms of training. And that was quite interesting because that gives us a good view. You know, we are going to be more and more specialized. We are going to look at the you know, creme de la creme in terms of the students and the interpreters who are going to go on. But yeah, that was interesting. But everyone in every program member of CIUTI is trying to adapt their curricula now to, of course, making sure we use technologies and AI in particular, and not necessarily shy away from using that. And so definitely that's the thing. But there are different tools as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Like everyone's talking about it, some positively, some negatively. I mean, there are a lot of different feelings and thoughts out there about it. And I think you know, we might already be behind in the training because that side of it is moving so fast, so rapidly, as you know. In your opinion, how can you catch up with all of that? How is Macquarie at the moment? What kind of things have you incorporated so far?
Yeah, the really important part of your question here is that why, and it is often the case, are we falling behind in training, and we may already be, of course, with AI, but we are as well with many other technologies. And this is also, and I'm talking about TNI here, this is also what surprises me, is that there's a lot that is being done in research and in training to make sure that there are new tools implemented in the classroom, whichever they are. And it's interesting to see that not necessarily many trainers and educators actually implement those things in the classroom, either because they don't know how to do that, or because the universities they work in, the programs they work in, do not have the resources to do that, or because mainly or very often instructors in interpreting or trainers in interpreting are practitioners, and in their practice they haven't really used that. So some of them have an interest in that, but that's a very small number. So it's quite interesting. And again, this is something I was, when I was thinking of this discussion, I was planning to mention this, is that there's a lot happening, and at the same time there's not much happening, neither in training nor in practice, you know, in the term of in the uptake and in the use of that. So how do we use AI at the moment? So we try, of course, to stay informed and make sure that we know about what's happening. So there are, on a regular basis, webinar or even seminars organized within the university with people from computer science, with people from different departments, and, you know, everyone discussing how can we implement AI in higher education in general. So there are lots of discussions on that, because of course it's affecting very much the way students study, the way they write their assessments, the way they can perform as well. So that's something we have to take into account. For translation and interpreting, we need to make sure at least that we tell students that there are positive things to do in preparation, in glossary building, in preparations of text, for example, from which they want to work. I'm always pushing a lot, you know, in training of interpreters to develop their skills in speech writing, and so definitely this is something that they can do with the help of AI. You know, I want to speak with that level of register on that specific topic. Can you help me to? So you can really be guided in an interesting way, because very often students, or on a regular basis, students have to deliver speeches from which we provide the interpretation in the classroom. So there are ways, definitely, but there are now as well ways AI is definitely incorporated within some technologies, and I know we're going to talk about this in a few minutes as
First
well.
Of all, can you talk about the categories of interpreting technology? You know, we said, or we know that it can be divided into technology-mediated, technology-supported, and technology-generated. Can you do a little bit of an explanation on what these are and give some examples to us, please?
Yeah, and this taxonomy, or that is coming, it's something that most of us in interpreting training and research use. That comes from Sabina Brown from the University of Surrey, where she has actually established those categories, if I'm not mistaken. So technology-mediated interpreting is everything that aims at increasing the service. Could be management systems, for example, IMS and things like that, that you would use simply in management
Like at
of
the
interpreting
LSP
services.
level, let's say,
Yep, at the
or
LSP
project
level. So
management
that's
level. Yeah.
so that would be tech mediated would be that, but that's also to increase reach, for example. So distance remote interpreting, so from telephone interpreting to all elements of VRI, RSI. This is technology mediated.
On-demand interpreting as well, I guess.
Yeah. So that's where the technology helps you to increase the service and increase the reach. Then you would have technology that assist you in increasing, let's say, the preparation, the performance, the productivity of the interpreter. So that would be more technology supported. So what would fall under that would be all computer assisted interpreting tools. So it could be digital pens that we mentioned before, could be tablets and, with apps, but could be also speech to text technology, automatic ASR, so automatic speech recognition, etc., etc. So that's part of, I mentioned as well in one of our discussions in the past, something called augmented virtual reality. So there are, and I can say a few words about those different things that people are trying here and there. But whether it is speech recognition, whether it is tools that you use the ID with when it's interpreted, supported, is just simply helping the interpreter to perform better, to prepare better, to have a higher productivity or things like that.
When you say ASR, automatic speech recognition, in a way we can see this in, I guess, some of the subtitling on some videos where you've got speech text recognition and then machine translation of that as well, almost all simultaneously happening.
Yeah. If there's no human in the process, then that would fall probably under the last category, which is media or the technology generated, output in that case, and then this is something we can also mention. But otherwise, ASR with humans, for example. Sorry.
How does that assist an interpreter? Like, in what context can an interpreter use ASR?
So there are some software that exist, for example, and this is something that is being researched by colleagues in Germany or colleagues in Belgium at the moment, where at the Parliament, at the European Parliament, and with different other partners, where, for example, you have a software which is an automatic speech recognition software, and you can link that to your own laptop in the booth, and make sure that the speech is the source, if you want, that you have to interpret, is also fed into that channel and that software. And then if you pair that with your glossary, and these tools can do some sort of terms extraction and things like that will extract terms and things that you ask them to extract. So on your screen, on your laptop in the booth, while the speech is being either fully generated, only parts are generated, or rendered, recognized and rendered, you will see, for example, I don't know, names, technical terms, dates, figures, things that will definitely pop on the screen. So people are looking at that in terms of research, see if how it can be used really in practice, but also how interpreters use that. Is it something you use to perform and to really create your or reproduce the speech in the other language, or is it something you simply use to check that what you've interpreted and what you have produced is actually correct? So there are different ways of using ASR. Yeah.
What does that do for the cognitive load? That there's a lot of things going on. I mean, you're already interpreting. There's a lot of things on your screen, and then there's a lot of decision making. Which bit of information to use, not to use. Are you going to interpret it, or are you checking for accuracy? I mean, how does that work? I think this is exactly that. It sounds like you're flying a jet plane. There's so many things that you have to be aware of.
I think it's always been what interpreters, and specifically in simultaneous interpreting, are using. Everyone I've always
plus
talked
your
about
console, by the way,
multitasking and everything. But I think multimodality is something that is being very much researched by many people these days. Where you're right, what's happening in the room, the speakers, all the visual cues there, but also your own notes, your own glossaries. Then now if you have tools with terms popping in on the screen, that's another thing. Looking at, for example, what's projected in the room where you are interpreting. Absolutely, there are many things to take into account and juggle with. And this is why it's also interesting that research is being done on multimodality and cognitive effort, cognitive load, try to see indeed how interpreters perform when they have to use these different things. So again, this is to me what is interesting here, and I'm not necessarily involved in many of such projects, but what is interesting for me is to see how we are going to provide evidence through research and through projects on what impacts really practice of interpreting if you decide to incorporate such tools. But as I said before as well, and I think we're probably going to say that for the different things we're talking about, everyone is talking about AI, ASR, and AI helping with ASR and those things. But I personally do not know a single practicing conference interpreter, but I do not know all of them, of course, but I still, as you mentioned before, actively practice. I do about 40, 50 days a year. I'm in meetings with interpreters from different parts of the world, so I talk to different people. I do not know a single one who's using ASR, for example. It's used in research project. It's used at the European Parliament because you have the institution accepting that it is done within their own internal, if you want, systems. But otherwise, I do not know a single interpreter having worked with this in private meeting or in an international meeting where you have to ask the client and you need to get permission as opposed to get all these different things.
There's a whole bunch of privacy, confidentiality issues.
Exactly. So it's
security.
Interesting. It's interesting that we spend a lot of time talking about these things and the potential for interpreters, but again, in the reality, at the moment, at least, not much is really happening. I could say that about the digital pens that I know very well because I've worked with that and I researched that for many years. And whether it is in training or in practice, even if we've shown all the things you could do with that, no one is using them really.
You told me about this, we said 4 years ago now, and I'm not a conference interpreter, I'm a community interpreter. And I shopped around for it and I almost bought one. And you and I, we had this conversation. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, this thing actually records onto the pen. The device records the speech of the interlocutors onto the pen. And all of a sudden you're thinking about confidentiality issues and privacy issues. And I don't think anyone is going to be okay with any session being recorded, even... sometimes you take notes and you tell people, I'm going to destroy my notes. Even some people get really upset about, an interpreter taking notes. Imagine if you tell them that, this conversation is being recorded.
You would have to ask for permission. And I think this is probably why it hasn't taken up. I mean, the use of digital pen technology or even tablet interpreting hasn't really taken up in the profession. I'm sure some clients are okay with that. And then you can ask, and I'm sure some interpreters have used that, but it's not widely implemented and widely used. And also the question has always been to me, you need to be trained to use those things before you can really do that. You're not turning up in a meeting tomorrow and say, okay, I'm going to use the pen I bought last weekend, and have, that's could be a problem. But that what I was trying to say is that whatever we're researching, whatever we're trying to use in training, it's always a long way. It's always a long way before it goes into practice, really. And I assume that's going to be the same with many of the tech-generated or tech-supported tools that are relying on AI, for example. We talked about ASR. I was talking before about, just simply to give you a hint on what it is, augmented virtual reality. There's a project at the University of Zurich, I think at the moment, from colleagues who are looking at using VR glasses, these big, but augmented in the sense that what you have is that, for example, so you would look in the VR space, you would look at a speech that is being delivered, you have a speaker, but there will be elements in what you can see that are added as an augmented thing. So there will be vocabulary terms. So that's like with our ASR on your laptop, but that would be within the virtual reality environment. So things are being done. Again, same things. People are looking at what you could get in there and how it will impact the work of interpreters, which means you are here, you're looking at, the person you have to interpret for, but then all around there are different words and different things coming in. Interesting, very interesting.
It's like
but again,
a science fiction movie.
Yeah. So maybe in 50 years.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator 2. You look at someone and all of a sudden it gives you the body massage and everything. And,
Yeah,
you know, you're
absolutely.
you're in that setting, and it's
You're in
giving
that
you
setting.
terminology. It's giving you contextual knowledge, names, maybe their medical history. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Plus potentially and this is what that actually takes us. That's the segue to the next, technology-generated interpreting, where the human is really no longer involved in that, where it's really what we call speech-to-speech, or machine interpreting. Speech-to-speech, where you have, if you sort of break down the different things, you have your speech that through speech to text is transforms from speech to text and text to text, with machine translation translating the speech. And with speech synthesis, you go from text again to speech, and you recreate the speech in the other language. So this is happening, where humans are no longer invited to interpret.
Humans out.
The machine generate that.
But is it all on word level though? All these translations that we're talking about, it's all on word level though, isn't it? I mean, is it going to pick up the intention, the emotions, the aggression, the happiness?
I think this is what everyone is saying. It's where will this be used? We know that Google has launched not so long ago their Translatotron 2 and 3, so second and third generation. One is AI powered. We know that Kudo has also very recently, the platform Kudo launched as well their Kudo AI. Technology generated interpretation, where again humans are not in the picture, and it seems quite, in some languages at least it seems quite to be performing quite well. I think back to what you were saying, where we will see limitations is probably where there are high everything is high stakes, that high risk, and of course where you have things that are, as you mentioned, emotions, you mentioned humor, you mentioned things like that, but definitely high risk. I heard someone, I think this is something that we got from one of the people we heard when we did the report for NAATI that we're going to talk in a few minutes, but someone told us these areas where we're going to use interpretation generated by AI, by technologies, probably where humans are reluctant to provide their services or do not provide their services. That might be in some very small areas, but again, I think the minute you have something which is high risk, high stakes, and that's probably not going to happen.
Well, it's, we're talking about training of interpreters and translators with AI, but then we need to also talk about the training of service users, working with AI. Where at what point you start the conversation as it being a low risk conversation, and then it becomes a high risk conversation within a split second. And at what point is that service user going to say, oh, hang on, I'm now going to call a real interpreter? I've heard just quite recently that in the United States, some government organizations are already using artificial intelligence interpreting, just machine interpreting. And I spoke to Dr. Holly Silvestri as well a few episodes ago about their Safe AI task force and their recommendations working with AI. What she flagged there is already happening, where service users are saying, oh, this is low risk. We're just going to, maybe talk about getting a new appointment date. Very easy, huh? When can we see you again? February 17th. Okay, that's it. And then the client asks a question which automatically turns it into high stakes. We're always training interpreters and translators. So there's so much onus on the practitioners, and that's your job. That's understandable. You're there training. You're there constantly training new practitioners. But I think there's always a vital part that we miss is the training of the service users. I agree. Who addresses that?
I mean, we do as well. I mean, there's a lot of work that is done in universities, and again, that's around the world. And I know that through the CIUTI network, there's a lot of work that is being done in interprofessional education, having different panels where you work with doctors, lawyers, everyone in community interpreting, in public service interpreting, but also in other areas. And then we have opportunities, I hope, from time to time to, as well inform the LSPs who will inform the clients. And I think we need to have, specifically with AI and the ethical issues, we need to have a very open and transparent discussion about when to use AI, not to use AI. But you're right, you switch from a low risk to a high risk situation in a very, very short time. So this is, again, not something you can anticipate fully. So I think it's where the issues are, educating everyone, but even the translators and interpreters on making the right choice at the right time. Now, yeah, of course, yeah, the full interpretation with machines and things. I mean, I work in some areas where I can't imagine, very technical, scientific, where the stances of the participants are extremely important, and you need to know the history of their stances and their discussions, meeting after meeting, year after year, and to make sure that you can get it. I don't have the feeling, and again, that machines can do that now, and it's not necessarily high stakes, but it is definitely, or high risk. It is definitely high stakes because decisions are made about different types of implementations and of decisions later on. But where I was going with this was also something that we at CIUTI decided to tackle for the next 2-3 years, probably, for the board to be very well aware of, is there is a lot of gullibility, I think, in the audience, in the public, about what technology can do. The general public thinks and believes that everything, can be done by technology. Many clients believe that as well. So I think there's a lot of information or misinformation to be.
The pain side always is that, isn't it?
Exactly. and I think this is our role as well. Every stakeholder in TNI, and this is definitely something CIUTI wants to do, is to make sure that we manage to inform, from the young kids who learn languages to their parents who want to don't want them to study translation and interpreting because there's no future for you, to the people, as you said, the users of those services, the people who make decisions on where to use this or that. I think there's a lot that needs to happen. I don't look forward to getting older too quickly, but I look forward to seeing things in 2-3 years where we are with AI, because I'm not 100% sure that this is going to be as revolutionary, at least in TNI, as people think it will be. But I may be wrong. But we'll see.
I think there's still a lot to see and do coming up. So we'll definitely not short of topics in this area to speak about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank you for that. That's really helpful. I want to bring you to a recent report that NAATI-commissioned from Macquarie University. You and I had a brief discussion about this, but there is quite a lot to cover there. And I know that the report itself hasn't been made public yet, so I do appreciate you coming on today to talk us a little bit about it. I do really appreciate that. So NAATI recently commissioned a report from you and Macquarie University on translation and interpreting technologies and the impact on the industry. That's the key bit here. Why did they commission this? What are the reasons? I mean, good on them. This is great timing for it.
Yeah,
and kudos to NAATI management as well. They're just really trying to stay up to date with everything and go, hang on, everyone's talking about this now. What is really going on? So thank you, NAATI, for commissioning this. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, I think the reason you've just definitely explained. I think they approached us, meaning me and two colleagues, Professor Kruger at Macquarie Uni and Dr. Liao, to survey or to go around what is being done in translation and interpreting technologies worldwide. And the reason was simply because they wanted to inform the board of NAATI. I mean, we were contacted by the CEO and his team to conduct that report or that study, to write that report, so that they could inform the board and make very informed decisions on where NAATI wants to go. So I think it's definitely forward-looking. It's definitely a great thing from NAATI, NAATI, for those who do not know, in case we have viewers from all over the world, is the National Accreditation Authority in Australia for our professions. And they're in charge of certification tests. They're in charge of making sure they have the right compass and radar to go in the right direction. And I think this is what they needed to understand what was happening. So what the report or the commission, what we were commissioned to do was to bring together all sorts of technologies that people are talking about in TNI, and what was the uptake around the world somehow, but also and what was the perception from practitioners, because we know that there is sometimes reluctance, we know that there is also a lot of ignorance, and so I think they were interested in the perception of the perception by interpreters and translators about these new technologies. So that's what the report is about. We have simply compiled in different categories, going from translation and interpreting and training and education. We have compiled all sorts of factual things, surveys and findings from various areas to try to explain to readers, the board first, but this is, and I'll go there in a minute, this is going to be made public soon, to inform readers of this report of, okay, what's around. We had to put a dead end, if you want, somehow in terms of dates, and we decided to do that until the end of 2023, because there are even still new things since then that have popped up
as
somewhere.
you were typing it out, there'd be new things coming up.
Exactly. So we agreed with NAATI that we would definitely put the end to the end of 2023. Okay. But still, this is extremely rich, and this is something we try to show as well, how those technologies, specifically in translation, but not only, have an impact or an effect on the workflow of translators and interpreters. Mm-hmm. So not only this exists because people wouldn't know where it goes and why it's important. So where in the workflow of the translation process and the workflow of interpreting as well, how these technologies have an impact. So yeah, what we talked about before, for example, technology-mediated, generated, supported. We did that for translation, interpreting, and with all sorts of examples and what was around. That led us to a part of the report on training and education and for the future. And that also took us to, and this is a part that we are not going to make public, but to provide recommendations to NAATI as an organization for them to think about what the future of certification or of endorsement of the institutions that NAATI endorses and things like that, what to take into account for the future of the professions, in particular for the future of the workforce in Australia. So that was what the report was about. That was what the deliverables were. We had to provide that report and be as comprehensive as possible about what existed at least up to December 2023. Very, very interesting. It's a 70-page report. We're going to present some results here and there, but more importantly, we're going to make that report public without the part that is more private.
Are you going to present it?
NAATI has agreed as well.
Will you be presenting at the national conference, or is it national conference coming up?
Hopefully, me and one colleague, we proposed that we could make a presentation on specifically a survey that we did afterwards, but also mentioning, so of course, the report. The report is very factual. It's really for someone who doesn't know much about TNI technologies, has heard about things, but cannot really
you put it all together,
around
compiled
that.
It, summarized it. That's very good, very accessible,
and very, very interesting sections, so that people again understand how it impacts the workflows, and maybe where to situate yourself about this and about that, and that was it. So that was not only about Australia. We were trying to find, of course, data about the Australian workforce, but this is what we were actually short of, which led us to a different project after that. But also we were really looking at the rest of the world, because it's also interesting to see, what the uptake is around the world, what the perceptions are around the world. So we used lots of surveys, international surveys done by other organizations or by local and national professional associations. So there was a sort of big literature review, if you will.
How long did it take you to put all that together? And
well, we
write the
were given
report?
7 months by NAATI
7
to do
months.
that. So it was a lot of work. Yeah. So again, we worked hard, and I again here
Congratulations to you and the team.
Congratulate me and the two colleagues here, Jan-Louis Kruger and Xixin Liao as well, for the great work that we did together on that one. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the Australian context, you were saying that you couldn't find enough data on the actual practitioners and their usage of technology or perception of technology. Tell me a little bit about this survey. Was it how wide did you reach? How many people did you have on there? Did you see anything that you thought was going to be there, or did anything surprise you? Let's talk about this survey. You completed the survey in March 2024. Tell me first about the methodology, how you did it, and then maybe give me a little bit of information about, what the findings were.
Yeah, so as you said, we while doing the NAATI report, or the report for NAATI, we realized that we didn't have enough of recent data about the Australian workforce. So we decided, after we submitted the report, so that's not part of the report, after we submitted the report, we decided it would be great to run a survey for the Australian workforce. So the same colleagues, plus our new colleague that has joined us at Macquarie University, Dr. Vanessa Enriquez Raido, who joined us.
We'll say hello to Vanessa. And Vanessa, hopefully I'll be having you here soon talking about the translation side of things.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think we should leave her speak about that more than me. But definitely, yeah. So she joined us in the start of 2024 at Macquarie. So with her as well on the team, we designed that survey. So we reached out through a questionnaire of different sections in the questionnaire, and I can detail that. We reach out through OSIT, through NAATI, through the LSPs, thanks to you as well. We reach out to many of our practitioners in Australia. And so the survey was conducted in March, April this year. And we ended up having 1,492 respondents to the survey, which is definitely
that's huge.
something.
I have to say. Congratulations.
We did not expect that, to be honest with you.
Because
we thought there would be fewer than that, but yeah,
that's 25-30% of the entire workforce. That is a very, very good chunk of it.
Yeah, I think we have something close to 10,000, and I'm not talking about credentials. I think it's 9,000 something practitioners in Australia.
I think
so
it's less. It's
less than,
I think it's less, and it's reducing at the moment, which is another conversation.
To be double checked with NAATI, but I think, not speaking about the credentials, but definitely the apparently listed translators and interpreters. But anyway, we had about approximately 1,500 respondents. So the questionnaire was divided in 4 parts. We had 4 different sections, one on biographical and demographic information, one looking at professional information, who they are, what sort of education they have, what sort of areas of the professions they're practicing into, and also their education, the training they've had in translation. So they're in translation and interpreting, but also in technologies, because the survey was about technologies and the use and uptake and perception of technologies by the Australian workforce. We had a section then on the TNI technology skills and use. And then we had a last section on attitudes and beliefs about TNI. What surprised me, I'm not necessarily going to give you the whole findings. We are still actually working at a more granular level now, analyzing different things.
Will this be made public, the survey?
We will definitely. We've already submitted an article in a journal, in an academic journal, where we have provided an analysis of some of the data. I will be with Vanessa presenting this at the OSIT conference in November. We will be presenting some of the data as well. So I'm not exactly sure what you'd be interested in, but what I can share with you is that we had, in terms of figures that surprised us, we had about 26% of all the workforce. So I don't know if I should say only 26%, or that's good, 26% of practitioners use technologies. I was about to say only 26% of practitioners use technologies, because I thought that would be more. But I have also to be very careful here when saying that it's everyone who replied, and some people are either translators and interpreters, or interpreters only. And what interests us very often with translation technology is the work of translators. So 50% of translators in Australia use CAT tools, use technology. So this was not a surprise. 50%, yeah. So half of the workforce, which is better than a quarter of the workforce. Interpreters do not really use technology. Yes, they use remote technology sometimes. They use some platforms if they have to, but not as much as we thought, actually. And in a way that's good. That means interpreting is still on site more than remote, and more than which is a reality as well. But yeah, interpreters are those who are not really interested in all the things we talked about before. They probably do not see
we already said also, that's a lot for research and training purposes. It really doesn't interpret into practical use. No, especially when you think that Australia, it's more about community interpreting than conference interpreting, let's say.
Yeah. What we found, what interests me, because I had not realized that would be that the case. 26% of the respondents who practice translation and interpreting in Australia do not have formal qualifications. And I do not mean formal qualifications in TNI, do not have formal qualifications post-secondary education. No. Yeah. So that's quite interesting, because that means that, and then we had, of course, people with TNI qualification, at BA level, at master level, and more, but or even at graduate diploma level. But yeah, interestingly, also people with a degree from other areas or in other areas, but then moved into TNI for various reasons. But still, 1/4 of the workforce with no formal qualifications at all. That's a lot. And that's very important when we think about what we should do in the future in terms of professional development.
Indeed,
in terms of,
I was just going to say,
very important to say.
You're saying that not all or some tertiary institutions are providing some tech courses within their programs, and that might be more at the master's level, postgraduate level, compared to rather than the skill set level or the diploma, advanced diploma level, where they focus more on the core, I guess, interpreting skills. So that's a lot of people being missed, even at tertiary level. And then we're saying, more than 1/4 of the workforce have no formal qualifications, at least, according to the 1,500 or so people surveyed here. That is a huge gap in training, and I think a lot needs to happen with professional development, and not just introducing technology courses in tertiary institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And in tertiary institutions, as you know as well, we are limited in the languages that we cover. Each university with a TNI program in Australia covers only 5, 6, 7, at the most 10 languages, but that's not necessarily the languages.
Compared to the 150 languages that are being offered out there.
Exactly. And so this is also something I believe we should not lose sight of. Interestingly as well, and it's probably not the most important part of the survey, but interestingly as well, we realized that those universities who have formal courses in TNI, only 70% of those universities have units and modules in translation technologies, which is quite interesting.
So and out
of this 70%, half of them, if I'm right, half of them do not have that as a core module. It's an elective module or an elective unit in the curriculum, which to me is very, very surprising and is a big issue. Even if we're talking here about a small number of master students in only 5 or 6 languages, still it's not compulsory to undertake tech training. Again, I wonder, is it because universities do not have the right trainers for those things, or do not have the resources to have everything? And maybe it's more for the professional associations around, or for other, whether it is LSPs, whether it is private stakeholders, whether even universities could do that, do simply some professional development, short courses for the profession. They could be not language specific. And because what we try to see as well is that when we surveyed, and I'm looking at the stats, when we surveyed, we asked people whether they had undertaken any PD short course in TNI technologies, and 81% of 0.5% of the respondents had not undertaken any PD in TNI. Only
How much PD is there, though?
And that's the thing as well, is that I contacted OSIT, the professional association, and asked them over the last 4 years, from 2020 to 2024, so for 5 years, how many short courses in translation technologies have you run? And there was only 4, and only 4 at a very introductory level. So not even going in depth into that. We at Macquarie, through our short course program, because we also have a short course program, we are offering at the moment short courses in translation and interpreting technologies in partnership with Multicultural New South Wales. But the plan is to probably expand that to broader workforce in the future, because there's a big need. One thing that the survey showed very clearly is the correlation between the use when you have received training versus the use or non-use when you have not received training. You're going to tell me, but at the same time, if there's no training, of course, people may not be really enticed to use that. So that was an interesting thing. No training, very little use. Some training, way more used. Still not the panacea, but way more used. And both in CAT tools and KAI tools, machine translation as well. So overall, there's definitely a big call in the correlation of the data, but also from the qualitative responses that we got from the respondents. There was a big call for more training. We want more training. We want more training. We want more affordable training. More, So the question is always, how often, what level. We've realized in running our short courses at Macquarie that many people have a very low digital literacy. I'm not even talking about translation technology literacy, but
computer
literacy. Yeah, exactly. So that's also something to consider.
Yeah, look, we've been talking, as you know, I'm the head of training at all graduates, and I have a pretty vast PD training program as well, but I also take responsibility and accept the fact that I haven't done a lot of tech-focused PD, and that is something definitely we all have to work on. I've got a handful, and they are at introductory level. So there's definitely something, we all have to do, tertiary institutions, anyone who is out there, including OSIT and NextPD, plus there are some other PD organizations out there as well.
Absolutely.
As opposed to doing what's popular, supply demand kind of a thing. And I think that's where this report is going to come in very, very handy. Anyone who is producing quality PD will look at this and go, okay, I really need to put some focus on this, because whether it be funded or not funded, whether it be for business purposes or not, there is a lot of practitioners out there who are after this kind of training.
Absolutely.
And the industry is screaming out for it by the
100%. And as we were asked, what sort of take-home message do you have for, the profession, for trainers, the take-home message is that you don't want the Australian workforce to fall behind the rest of the world, because I can tell you that in many other areas of the globe, training in TNI tech is definitely well offered and catered for, and I'm not too sure we are providing a good service to our workforce in Australia. So we need to make sure that they do not fall behind, that the practitioners do not fall behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% from the bottom of my heart.
The survey showed again that in Australia, 88% of the practitioners are freelancers. So being a freelancer means that you do not work only in Australia or in the region. You work for other agencies around the globe. If you are, interested, there are possibilities, and so those other.
When it comes to translation, there's a lot of international work out there, isn't there?
And so people commissioning work from different countries will definitely expect the Australian workforce to know what they're doing with technologies as well, because they will tell you, okay, this is the project, you have to use this to do it, you have to use that. And if you say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. So look, I hope that that's going to change. And also food for thought. That's a conversation we had with NAATI post-survey, not only with the report, but certainly food for thought in terms of certification as well. What do we want to do in the future in terms of testing? How do we endorse institutions who are NAATI endorsed in the future? I mean, this is for them to clarify that and to come up with an answer to that. But that might have an impact as well on what they want to do. But in any case, there's definitely a need for way more training, and the survey showed that, even if it's not a surprise. I think otherwise, we've given you most of the
Well,
salient
thanks
points
for
of
that.
them.
I look forward to seeing the full report as much as we're allowed to see it. I know the recommendations for NAATI won't be on there, but the rest of it, I look forward to seeing it publicly available. So we'll keep an eye out for that, and also definitely look forward to the full presentation on the survey. Hope to see you at the AUSIT National Conference, because I think whether you're a practitioner, trainer, LSP, whatever kind of a stakeholder you are, there's a lot we can learn from this survey. Absolutely. So, you've done some amazing work here. I thank you and appreciate it. As a PD producer as well, I'm going to, I've got my eyes nice and early on these findings. Maybe I might get a bit of a head start. But yeah, definitely, Mark, we also know that Macquarie University, like with some other universities, we know Monash does it quite regularly too. And you used to work there as well before you came to Macquarie University. That could be one of the reasons why, where there are a lot of workshops on PD offerings by Monash and Macquarie University. So I think it's very important that you keep doing that. And we welcome all other universities as well who are able to produce the kind of quality PD that is required for our practitioners. And I will also do my best as well at Next PD to get some quality PD out there when it comes to interpreting and translation technology, especially on the practical side of things.
Absolutely, and we definitely intend with Macquarie, and now with having Vanessa joining the team as well, and she's really an expert as well in translation technologies, and she's been for 20 years, if not more, but also in AI, large language models, and how do we turn that into, once again, training skills and training for the professionals. So I think there's definitely something that's going to happen there, and we do not plan to drop the ball there. The other thing is that from the conversations I've had with different stakeholders, you of course, but others, we all understand, as we mentioned before, that there may be limitations within higher institutions or education institutions to run such things. So it will definitely come through PD. It will definitely have to come through PD. Collaborations between different stakeholders. Absolutely. And I think we need to make sure we do this. Yeah, absolutely.
And we've done that before. So, it is, we've seen that it's very possible, collaborating with PD organizations and tertiary institutions to produce for a bigger outreach.
Yeah. Look, the big thing at the moment everywhere, based on research and based on observations and facts, is that we need to make sure that we move into what is called augmented translation, augmented interpreting. People, understanding that they need and they will need the tools to do better. And so in terms of training and education, we need to move into or in the direction of machine translation, machine interpreting literacy. How to use machine translation, when to use machine translation or machine interpreting, when not, and how. So this is really that level. There are different things that exist around there are free modules here and there, but I think we really need to make sure that we do that. There are some very important ethical considerations as well to take into account when we deal with this. So
MTPE, machine translation post editing, is now becoming huge as well, and not only about the training needs to be not only about what is this how to use it, but also some of the ethical considerations as well, but also not just training of the practitioners like we were saying, but also training of the organizations who are just going and using machine translation and going, oh, here you go, can you please provide me some proofreading editing for this? And, you know, I won't go into too much detail, but there's a lot to be done for those for the clients as well, for the actual submissions of the work.
And it
again,
goes
some training needs to be done in that department too.
And it goes back to what we were saying before as well, the gullibility of the general public about AI and what translation, specifically in translation, what it can do. I mean, people do not realize, yes, you can use your app and your thing in a restaurant in a country where you don't speak the language. That's no real risk there. But then the minute you start putting a text into a software to have it translated because you're using it when you're interpreting or you're using it for your translation thing, do people realize the ethical issues behind that? The fact that you have not been given the authorization to do that? Do they know where the data goes? Do people realize that? Do people realize, of course, that the quality of the output may not be what they want if they and on and on and on. I mean, there are. You talked about this before. You mentioned data confidentiality and privacy issues around the use of AI and some of those machine translation tools, or all the issues of copyright infringement, all the there's a lot, the legal consequences of that as well. People mention, and this is something we do not necessarily think of, but people mention the decline in proficiency in languages. Some people call that language diskilling. The fact that languages are not going to be taught the same way, are not going to be, because we believe that machine translation will do it. We know some universities and close language programs on the base, or reform their language programs on the basis of the fact that fluency proficiencies may not be required as it was before, because we have machines doing that for us. We have AI, and so on and so forth. So the whole ethical concerns are quite, actually, that's quite broad, actually, the range of concerns and issues that people have to consider.
Look, I asked ChatGPT, I said, will machines take over the interpreting and translation profession? ChatGPT didn't think so. He said, or it said that it would be used for augmenting and assisting, but humans will always be. So, that's what ChatGPT thinks. And it's everything that we've been talking about. I wonder why it says the same thing. Maybe it's just picking up things that are already in literature from around the world and just saying what people are already saying.
And we are going to be feeding the whole machine, the whole thing now, with this recording,
Absolutely. Well, there's more coming your way. Chat.
Look at me, chat.
Thank you very much.
Is it actually Chad GPT? Is it actually?
Oh, maybe.
Hey, Chad.
I don't know. And I always wonder why chat potatoes were called chat potatoes. Maybe it's the chat of that, but we'll have to look into that. I know how prolific of a academic you are. You've got a massive output when it comes to any kind of publishings, whether it be books, reports, surveys. What is tickling your fancy these days? What are you focusing on these days? Is there anything that you're working on now that we're allowed to hear about? Without giving too much away, so someone doesn't.
I'm very happy to share some of the things that I'm working on.
Keep in mind, this is an international podcast now.
Yeah, of course,
with thousands of viewers.
But that's actually a good thing, because one thing that will definitely keep me awake in the coming months is that as part of any university, you have regularly to reaccredit your course, and this is always a good opportunity to review what you're doing and to review your curriculum. And of course, all these things we've talked about today make me and my colleagues at Macquarie think about, okay, what would be the best course we could offer to people to be trained tomorrow, in translation and interpreting. And so I think there are there are probably things we would do today in a different way to what we did in the past. So I think this is one thing that I'm really excited at the moment. I told you my focus is really in didactics and pedagogy. And so I'm really interested in trying to see how we can bring more of and everything that relates to accessibility, everything that relates to, all sorts of tools that you use around captioning, subtitling, so audiovisual translation at large, machine translation, machine interpreting, AI, large language models. How do we all do this to always do the same thing, which is to train the next generation of translators and interpreters who are going to undertake the work in the next decade? So that's definitely something that keeps me awake and interested. The other thing that I'm really at the moment in research specifically that we've been thinking for about a year now with my colleagues at Macquarie, those I mentioned before, is to look at RSI. So I told you about the lab that we have at Macquarie. Mm-hmm. And so in the lab, we have two different rooms. So one room is set up with what we call hard console. So of course it's RSI. So the output, the speech or what you have to interpret, the input comes from screens and videos and whatever that is.
Draw me a verbal picture of what that room looks like so we can picture
so a large room, which is sort of like a giant booth. So it's a large room with two interpreting consoles, Bosch consoles, two large screens one for each interpreter, one console for each interpreter. That's for one language. So that's one language booth. And then from the room next door, we can simply, or from wherever, we can simply have the source text, the source speech to be interpreted. And so the idea is to train interpreters to still work remotely, but with the console as you would have in a booth. So that's what we label hard console in RSI. But then in the room next door to that room, we have a smaller room where we have reproduced a sort of home studio. So it's one laptop, one big screen, your microphone, your headset, and the fact that there is no console. And when you provide interpreting, whether you're using Zoom, which is probably not the best, or whether you use a proper interpreting platform, the console is embedded in the platform. So of course, what you have to do, as you mentioned earlier, is that you have to do other things than purely interpreting. You also have to go and click around to click, your console on and off, changing the languages, getting the relay, getting the right channels, etc., etc. So two different settings. So what we are interested in researching, and we are at the moment designing the protocol of that, is to look at how interpreters work when they work with in RSI with hard consoles or with soft consoles. And we will be looking at cognitive effort in relation to what you have to do, specifically when you use soft consoles and all these things on screen that you have to get used to. But also are going to look at attention distribution. So my colleagues the colleagues I mentioned before are specialists in eye tracking. So we are going to use eye tracking technology while interpreters are interpreting remotely on hard or soft console to see where their attention goes with one or the other tool. And so that's going to help us to understand exactly what happens when you interpret with one and with the other one, and how it impacts somehow the performance, how we will interview the interpreters and question them, see how they feel using one or the other in relation to all this. So that's the plan. So it's still, again, we are designing this because there are many variables and you have to be careful not to have too many. But that's one of the things that Can
I ask something?
Yeah.
When practitioners are providing their services from home, let's say, not necessarily from a hub where you might have the hard console.
Yeah, exactly. Hub.
It wouldn't. The console would not necessarily be available to buy easily for anyone providing services from home, would it? Because then, am I right in thinking that majority of these people would be using the soft console already?
Yeah, the soft console is on screen, so there's nothing really to buy. It's embedded in. If you use Zoom, and you may have.
But it's not like they have a choice to go to JB Hi-Fi and buy a hard console, so they have to use a soft console, right?
I mean, we know now that there are 4 soft consoles. You can have a sort of extension in with a hardware console
you can. Okay.
Yeah, some people have experienced that, but in the project we're not looking at that. We're really looking at keeping the soft console, which is the way most interpreters working remotely probably still use. And yeah, we understand when simply in a subjective way, when you talk to people, we understand that they have the feeling there's so much to do. Some interpreters, older interpreters maybe, or some interpreters who haven't had any training in that, find it, too demanding. There's so much, and the onus is on the interpreter as well. If there is any issues with the connectivity, if there is any issue with the equipment you have, the microphone and things, but also if you are not using the platform, the console, the way you should, that creates a problem. If you're not using the chat box to chat with the technicians or with the or with your booth partner, all these things are quite difficult, and it's been a real change. I mean, most of us, I suppose, got used to that, but we that's what we're interested,
getting used to something is different than getting training for something.
Oh, absolutely.
So just because you're using it now, you might be using it wrong. You might be not using it to its optimum potential.
Absolutely.
So I think, this research that you're working on is going to be key again with providing training and PD, because like you said, just because you're used to it, it doesn't mean you're actually doing it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many facets that we could look into, and I'm not sure we are going to put all this in the project, but I'm lucky to be working with people in the Faculty of Medicine and Health and Human Sciences at Macquarie, and specifically colleagues from the audiology department. And one of my colleagues runs different projects that have nothing to do with interpreting, where he has equipment to put a very tiny microphone in the ears of his subject when he's looking at this or that. So we had a chat not so long ago, and we were thinking maybe we could, when doing or getting collecting data on RSI and the use of RSI by interpreters, I was thinking also maybe inviting him and having those microphones put in the ears of interpreters, just simply to see what the ear has to listen to. And specifically, we've been talking a lot during COVID and since then about toxic sound, about compressed sound because of platforms and because of things like that. And this is something we could see with those little microphones. We could have an idea of what exactly interpreters hear and how it impacts or not what they're doing and the quality of what they're doing. Is it more tiring? Is there more fatigue? We've heard all sorts of things, and true. I mean, the people are getting sick after doing too much remote interpreting. People have hearing issues after doing too much remote interpreting. So, it would be interesting with that sort of tools to see where we go. But again, as I was saying before, we're drafting the protocol at the moment, and we are wondering whether if you put too many different variables in there, that can become an issue. And so we'll see what we do. But there's potential. So there are things these are the things that interest me at the moment you ask. So
these are some of your favorite things. So just before I say see you later to you, Marc, you said that, you'll be reviewing the curriculum at Macquarie University T&I department. When do we see the new courses?
That's the thing with universities.
What's the procedure?
The thing is that
you want it tomorrow. When will it happen?
The thing is that I'm starting thinking and preparing what could happen. So the review will take place in 2025. So then when the review, which means you have a review panel and things like that, when the review's done, then you, if we redesign new things, that's going to take probably one more year before it's clearly offered. So I would imagine a new course probably in 2027. Probably not before that, so that's still still a long way. But it's
not really though. We know how quickly time passes.
And again, we are making changes every nearly every session, every semester. We're adding things. The fact, for example, that we have this new staff member that I mentioned, Vanessa, in translation technology, we've already changed quite a lot just there. The fact that we know things, we have Professor Kruger is also an expert in audiovisual translation and multimodality. We do implement different things there. We have colleagues, me included, working a lot with our colleagues from the different areas of healthcare in the Faculty of Medicine and Health. So we are also implementing changes in our curriculum. So the curriculum or the curricula are in any case changed and updated on a regular basis. But I think this picture, and that may not occur that way, but the picture I have in mind for, we have 5 degrees at the moment at Macquarie, so at least 1 or 2 of the degrees could be revamped to probably offer more training and more education in the areas we discussed today, and things that we could probably go deeper in that.
You don't sound busy enough. So I would also like to add to that, don't forget the rest of us out here. We need more PD, more workshops from universities and tertiary institutions like Macquarie University. So we already spoke about that, and I have your word for it. So let's get some PD out there, especially focusing on T&I technologies as well. Please, that's a request from me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's definitely going to happen. It's there and it's ready.
All right, fantastic. Looking forward to it. My dear viewers and listeners, I was very lucky today, as you were, to have Professor Marc Orlando at the Conversations T&I podcast. Marc, thank you so very much. I hope to see you soon, and I look forward to hopefully seeing your presentation at the AUSIT National Conference. I look forward to the publication of the NAATI-commissioned report soon. And thank you and good luck with everything. And I know what a supporter of not just the academic side of things of T&I and how much you care about the actual industry and the profession as well. So thank you very much for all your input, and thank you always for being accessible for me as well, because I do run a lot of things by you, so I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for having me, Fatih. A great pleasure, as usual.
Thanks very much. And before I let you go, Olympics are on.
Yes.
What should we be looking out for when it comes to France, and what kind of gold medals? Anything out there that you think France will be surprising people with?
Well, look, as an ex handball player, I'm definitely keeping an eye on the performance of the French team. They lost their first game, so that's just.
But they did lose to Denmark, mind you, and me being an ex handball player as well.
That's the thing.
If you're going to lose to someone, you lose to Denmark, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so I think there's definitely something there. I'm not exactly sure. We saw a few things in swimming already, but I'm not too sure otherwise, I'm not too sure. What about you?
Well, like both of us, we have 2 countries. Been keeping an eye on the swimming for sure. The canoe slalom this morning was very, very good. We got a gold medal in that. I'm keeping an eye out for archery when it comes to Turkey. Turkey's got some potential medals coming in archery. As well as basketball as well. I'll be keeping an eye out for that too. And just lots of late nights trying to get in as much live sport as I can these days.
That's a great season. I mean, we love that every 4 years, bang. No, that's definitely something.
I think it's like our only chance to watch live handball here anyway.
Yeah, well, look, in 2032 we'll have it in Brisbane. So maybe we'll go for a game.
Absolutely. Sounds great. I'll take your word for that. Okay. Again, thank you very much for listening and watching wherever you are in the world. This has been Conversations T&I podcast with my very special guest, Professor Marc Orlando from Macquarie University. Please don't forget to subscribe and like, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Vasya.
Conversations podcast.